The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. What if I told you that the finale of One Piece was planned since the very beginning? Luffy's journey began with him defeating a sea serpent, and it will end the same exact way. And what if I also told you that the entire arc of Skypiea, and especially this fake god right here, foreshadows Imu and the Void Century? This video today is going to destroy everything you're expecting to happen in One Piece. From events in One Piece chapter 1060 to Egyptian theology present in Alabasta to Christian theology present in Paradise, this theory video is filled with concrete facts and evidence to support the case that Imu-sama is a sea serpent, aka the Sea Devil. And in order to have this make any sense, I had to split up this theory video into 3 different chapters. Chapter 1, Apep, Chapter 2, One Piece, and Chapter 3, Leviathan. This will all make sense by the end of the video, so make sure to watch chapters 1, 2, and 3 so that this all makes sense. Starting with Chapter 1, Apep. So in Egyptian theology, there's a deity known as Sun God Ra, and he's super important. He's an influential figure in Egyptian culture. He was basically identified with noonday sun, or in other words, the dawn. So much like Luffy eating the Nika fruit, this makes Luffy a sun god, and throughout the story of One Piece, Luffy's bringing the dawn from country to country. Sun God Ra was the god of the sun, the god of the order, the god of the kings, and the god of the sky. And one interesting fact about Sun God Ra is he had a floating skyship known as the Solar Bark. It was a vessel known to travel through the sky, providing light to the world. But you know what would provide light to my world? If you hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell to never miss any of these consistent One Piece theories that tend to be true. But anyways, currently Luffy doesn't have a flying ship, some kind of flying saucer. That's not yet present in the story. And it'll make sense why I'm bringing up this flying ship known as the Solar Bark by the end of the video, so stay tuned. So Sun God Ra's biggest enemy was a deity known as Apep or Apophis. Apep was the embodiment of chaos and was thus the opponent of light, which is Sun God Ra. Now, as far as his appearance and as far as what he looks like, in art he appears as a giant serpent. And it is said that he was so gigantic and so strong that his movement alone would cause earthquakes. And his battles with Set may have been able to explain the origin of thunderstorms. Again, this is kind of vague information, but I promise you by the end of this video, you're gonna thank me for pointing this out. Now, Apep was not a primordial force in Egyptian theology, but a consequence of Ra's birth. Seeing how Apep was the greatest enemy to Sun God Ra, we could try to tie in Imu to Apep. And seeing how Apep is a consequence of Ra's birth, this would seem to imply that Imu only came to power, Imu only came to be because of Sun God Nika and Joy Boy. And if you take this a step further, again seeing how Apep is the consequence of Ra's birth, this could fuel the idea that Imu themselves betrayed Joy Boy. And seeing how Apep is a snake, if Imu is based on Apep, then this would mean that Imu quite literally snaked Joy Boy. Now, another clue that I find interesting is actually in the anime. So in Skypiea, there's actually a scene where there's a carving showing how there's a warrior battling a snake-like person. Seeing how Skypiea foreshadows a lot about Enel and Imu, such as having 5 followers, being a fake god, and going to higher ground, I could see that this act of a sculpture with a man battling a snake-like person could relate to Sun God Nika fighting and losing to Imu. Chapter 2, One Piece. Now, going back to the Solar Bark, the flying ship that I was talking about, if Imu betrayed Joy Boy, then this means that Imu would have inherited the Solar Bark. And recent developments in the One Piece manga, thanks to chapter 1060, we can see that there's some kind of floating ship in the sky providing light to the world. And coincidentally, the amount of lasers and lightning bolts coming out of this sky ship is 16. And Apep just so happens to be 16 feet long as the snake god. Now, yeah, that is pretty vague. That could be coincidental and a bit tinfoil, but people pointed this out to me and I just thought I would throw that out there. Now, this floating ship, this floating sky thing could very well be the ancient weapon Uranus, but I think at the very least it should be a floating sky ship given things already present in the story. And you should be led to believe that this sky ship that was used to take out Lelucia Kingdom in the hands of Imu is from the moon. Thanks to Enel's cover story when he goes to the moon, Oda confirmed that winged races migrated to Earth from the moon. But more importantly, when they went down to the blue planet, they brought down their technology with them, such as the automatas and the robots that we saw. And we know this to be true because on the moon there was thousands of them, but on Karakuri Island there is only a few. So this scientist on Karakuri Island was basically reverse engineering them to see how they work, because they came from the moon along with the winged races. And speaking about more moon technology, they already have spaceships on the moon. So I wouldn't be surprised if Oda was influenced by something like Star Wars, where spaceships, UFOs, and alien technology is common commonplace. Like Oda already shows us spaceships and space people, so it's very well possible that the ship in 1060 was a spaceship. Now also during chapter 1060, it's shown how this ship is sending thunder strikes all over the island, completely destroying it, which is a callback to how Enel's Arc Maxim was also a flying ship, and Enel himself was sending thunder strikes all over Skypiea. But I find it interesting how in 1060, this skyship was sending laser bolts straight down all across the island. This would heavily infer that the skyship used was just as wide as an island, making it absolutely massive. But anyways, going back to Enel, I've always been a person who is super interested in not only Enel himself, but also the Arc Maxim, since it has the world government logo on it. This was foreshadowing how the world government themselves would have a flying ship, as seen in chapter 1060. So to sum it all up, I believe that sun god Nika, aka Ra, had this flying ship, and through getting betrayed by Apep, aka Imu, Imu managed to take control of this flying ship. Now, are there other signs or clues in the story indicating that Imu is a snake? Well, Gear Force Snake Man might be a clue, given that Luffy's the main character and he's eventually gonna have a grand battle with Imu, an actual snake man. Then you also have Orochi, who's a snake creature from Japanese mythology known as Yamata no Orochi. And then you even have Boa, where herself and her devil fruit seem to be connected to Medusa, so it's very clear that Oda's interested in all this snake mythology, snake theology. I think it would be very interesting if Boa was a snake woman loving Luffy and Imu was a snake woman hating Luffy. Another clue that I see foreshadowing Imu being a snake is actually Kashigami from the Skypiea arc. Now, Kashigami was a snake introduced way earlier in the story, so if Imu was a snake person, then this was built up for a very long time. We also know that the Shandorians worshipped Kashigami as a god, much like the Gorosei are worshipping Imu as a god. Another interesting fact is the Shandorians sacrificing people to Kashigami was not common occurrence, and it was only for dire situations to solve issues. So this kind of raises the question, are the Gorosei like the Shandorians? Do they only go to Imu when there's some kind of dire situation going on? But the most important thing about the Kashigami is that it was slayed and defeated by Nolan. Seeing how Nolan himself parallels Roger in so many ways, and then Luffy parallels Roger as well, you could draw a connection between Nolan and Luffy. So if you look back to the Skypiea arc, Nolan defeated a snake that was treated as a fake god, and I believe Luffy will defeat a snake that's treated as a fake god. Another interesting detail about Apep is he waited for sun god Ra in a western mountain called Baku. Now this is kind of vague, this is kind of random, but this could relate to Imu waiting in a mountain known as the Red Line, waiting for sun god Luffy. It could be a reach, it could be tinfoil, who knows? I just thought I would throw that in there. Chapter 3, Leviathan. Now, I don't think Imu's just any regular snake or any regular serpent. I think he's more specifically a sea serpent. And one of the best models for this could be the Leviathan in Christianity. Now, the popular art for the Leviathan looks just like how Luffy versus Kaido went down. Now, some may say that's the furthest Oda's gonna go with the Leviathan, but I'd argue that moment is foreshadowing Imu. Like, Kaido himself is not portrayed as a sea monster in One Piece, and he's barely under the same classification of a snake. Seeing how both Apep from Egyptian theology and Leviathan from Christian theology are snakes, I'd argue Imu deserves the role of a sea devil. So then we could look back to that Kaido moment, we could look back to that Leviathan moment as foreshadowing. Now, if we take the idea that Imu is a sea snake or a sea serpent, we could connect this to something already in One Piece, the Sea Devil. Like, even back in chapter 19, Shanks mentions that the devil fruit was enchanted by sea devils, and whoever eats it gets amazing powers, but the sea turns against them. So if Imu was the sea devil in One Piece, this would mean that Imu themselves was the one enchanting devil fruits, or in other words, the ones who created devil fruits was Imu. And this opens a door for many possibilities and plot lines, such as the Void Century being erased from history because it was Imu that brought the devil fruits into the world. And considering the name Imu spelled backwards is Umi, the Japanese word for sea or ocean, it makes sense that Imu themselves was the one who cursed the devil fruits. Now, if we take a look at Christianity, since the Leviathan's from Christianity, it's ironic how Adam and Eve ate a fruit from the snake. This snake was known as the devil, and when eating the fruit the devil offered, it was a gift and a curse, which sounds exactly what Shanks explained the devil fruits to be, a gift and a curse. Now, seeing how Adam and Eve are already in the story of One Piece, one is a tree in Fishman Island and the other's a tree at an unknown island, why wouldn't Oda use the devil in One Piece? And who better to make the devil than the final villain of the story, the character who caused the whole mess of the Void Century, Imu. Sunlight Tree Eve, Treasure Tree Adam, and the devil, or more specifically the Sea Devil, would all be interconnected. connected. Now the Leviathan was obviously a creature that could swim, so again this would treat a Kashigami and Imu connection very well. Because Imu themselves, whether they ate a sea devil fruit or they're just inherently a sea devil, this would give them the ability to swim just like Kashigami. And the icing on the cake, the nail in the coffin when it comes to Imu being a sea serpent or a sea devil is present in chapter 1. Right before Luffy proclaimed that he'll become the Pirate King, he defeated a sea serpent. It's totally within Oda's writing style to have something in the beginning of an arc conclude and come full circle at the end of an arc. So seeing how One Piece is this huge grand adventure, this huge grand story, it makes a lot of sense that something in the beginning of the story will come full circle and conclude at the end of the story. Are you seeing this now? Imu is the sea devil worshipped as a fake god like Kashigami for enchanting devil fruits and using the ocean itself to curse users. But much like the Kashigami, Imu will be slain by Joy Boy to avenge his comrades and bring truth and order to the world. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for consistent One Piece theories. If you want a banger Blackbeard theory proving he ate the Ziha no Mi, there's a video to my side about it. You definitely gotta check it out. But never forget, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.